The atmosphere inside the studio had started warm and playful, exactly what viewers expected when Blake Shelton appeared on Kelly Clarkson's show. Laughter rippled through the audience as the band wrapped up a lighthearted intro, and Blake walked out with his familiar grin, waving casually, soaking in the applause. For a moment, everything felt effortless, two longtime friends sharing a stage, trading jokes the way they had countless times before. Kelly teased him about his latest project, he shot back with a sarcastic remark, and the crowd loved every second of it. But beneath the smiles, there was a tension that hadn't been obvious at first, like a low hum waiting to be heard. As the conversation shifted, Kelly gently steered things toward Blake's recent comments in an interview that had stirred online debate. At first, she framed it playfully, almost cautiously, as if testing the waters. Blake chuckled, brushing it off, saying people took things out of context all the time. The audience laughed again, but the rhythm had changed. Kelly leaned forward in her chair, her tone still friendly but sharper now, pressing him to clarify what he meant. Blake's smile tightened just a bit, his shoulders stiffening as he answered. He explained his point with confidence, but there was an edge to his voice that hadn't been there before. Kelly nodded, but she didn't let it go. She pushed back, offering a different perspective, one that suggested his words might have landed harder than he realized. The cameras caught Blake's jaw clench for a split second before he laughed it off, shaking his head. "You know that's not what I meant," he said, half joking, half defensive. Kelly smiled, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she reminded him that public figures carried responsibility, whether they liked it or not. The studio grew quieter, the audience sensing the shift from banter to something more serious. Blake shifted in his chair, crossing his arms. He responded firmly, saying he was tired of being told how to speak or what opinions he was allowed to have. His words came faster now, the easygoing charm replaced by frustration. Kelly tried to lighten the mood again, joking that she wasn't trying to start a fight, but Blake interrupted her, just slightly, but enough for everyone to notice. The interruption hung in the air. Kelly raised her eyebrows, surprised, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Blake sighed, rubbing his hand across his face, as if realizing too late how far things had gone. The audience shifted uncomfortably, some nervous laughter breaking out. Kelly calmly said she respected his honesty, but that disagreement didn't have to turn personal. Blake shook his head again, clearly agitated now. He said it always seemed like people wanted to corner him, especially on live TV, turning conversations into traps. His voice wasn't loud, but it was intense, and it cut through the room. Kelly straightened in her chair, her tone firm but controlled. She reminded him that he had agreed to come on the show and talk openly, and that challenging questions were part of the deal. She emphasized that it wasn't an attack, it was a conversation. Blake leaned forward, pointing lightly toward the floor as he spoke, saying conversations were supposed to go both ways, not feel like interrogations. The word landed hard. The band members exchanged glances, unsure whether to play something light or stay silent. The cameras zoomed in closer, capturing every expression. Blake's face had lost all traces of humor now. He spoke about feeling misunderstood, about how years in the spotlight had worn him down. His voice cracked just enough to hint at something deeper than anger, exhaustion. Kelly listened carefully, nodding, but when she responded, she didn't back away from her stance. She acknowledged his feelings but stood by her point, saying growth often came from discomfort. That was when Blake leaned back sharply, exhaling through his nose. "I don't need a lesson right now," he said bluntly. A ripple of shock passed through the audience. Kelly's eyes widened slightly, not in anger, but in disbelief. She paused, choosing her words carefully, and replied that she wasn't trying to teach him anything, she was just being honest. Blake laughed, but it wasn't the warm laugh from earlier. It was short, bitter, and final. He glanced off stage, then back at Kelly, shaking his head. "You know what?" he said quietly, standing up from his chair. Gasps echoed across the studio as the movement caught everyone off guard. Kelly quickly stood too, asking him to wait, to sit back down so they could talk it through. Blake didn't raise his voice, but his posture was rigid, his decision already made. "I came here to have a good time," he said, looking around the room, not to feel cornered. The audience was completely silent now. Kelly took a step toward him, her expression a mix of concern and frustration, telling him that wasn't her intention at all. Blake nodded once, as if acknowledging her words, but his eyes were distant. He thanked the audience briefly, his voice steady but cold, and then turned toward the exit. Kelly called his name, asking him not to leave like this, reminding him of their history and friendship. Blake paused for just a second, his hand hovering near his jacket, as if considering turning back. The cameras held on his face, capturing the conflict in his eyes. But then he exhaled, shook his head one last time, and continued walking toward the side of the stage. The sound of his footsteps echoed louder than they should have, each step amplifying the shock of what was unfolding. Kelly stood frozen, watching him go, the bright studio lights suddenly feeling harsh and unforgiving. And as Blake disappeared backstage, the room was left suspended in disbelief, everyone wondering how a conversation that began with laughter had unraveled so quickly, and what this moment would mean once the cameras stopped rolling.